Hello, gorgeous souls. Welcome, and I invite you to stay magical. This is chapter number 3 on my friend Fear, Finding Magic in the Unknown by Meera Patel. Chapter 3 is titled Being in a Body of Fear. The most complicated fears we harbor and hold on to are the ones that begin and end with who we are. It's easy to pick ourselves apart for things we cannot control, but the truth is that most of life happens outside of our control. It's impossible to make someone love you or leave you, change the body you were born into, or choose the circumstances that surround you. She writes, I was afraid of myself for a long time. I spent a whole summer lying in bed watching the ceiling fan whir above me. The air, thick and wet, lowered itself onto me like thousands of soggy, thin blankets, the way August air in New York always does. It was a Saturday morning. What I really wished I could do was go to the beach, but the very idea kept me from getting up. I thought about showering and putting on a bathing suit. It won't be so bad, I told myself, but my heartbeat was already picking up speed. I thought about putting on a pair of shorts and stepping outside into the sunlight, into the big, bright world. I wanted to feel warmth against my skin, but my chest was beginning to tighten and my eyebrows were knitted together, considering all the things that could easily go wrong. My mind drowned with possibilities, all simultaneously pushing and pulling, overwhelming me as they are spiraling out of control. What I really wanted to do was go to the beach, but my fear wouldn't let me. Fear is born in the mind, but it quickly begins to form a physical shape. It is closely entwined with the nervous system, and when awakened, sends a clear message to the brain, help, I'm in danger. So what I wanted to add to that is don't let the overwhelming emotions fear brings hold you back from what you want. Fear is a companion of the survival mechanism we were all born with. When something we want to do brings in fear, fight or flight is triggered. I'm in danger. In this day and age, we use fight or flight differently than, say, back in caveman times. Once the fight or flight is triggered, a chemical starts building, or it's, engaged, that is meant to be exerted through action. This is called cortisol. The only known way to release it is through action. Action. If we don't, this cortisol continues to build and can start manifesting as things such as depression. This can feel crippling, as described in Meera's beautiful book. As if unable to function, as if unable to get up and do the things that we really love. It is very real, and you aren't alone. This is why viewing fear as a part of your intuition is so key. If we begin to understand not only the science of it, but take the scary mask off of our friend fear, we begin to see that fear is not the enemy. We have to choose a new way of utilizing our pre-built instincts using action. This is another good description of how fear encaptures the body. Your heartbeat speeds up. The idea that everything will be okay becomes unfathomable. And that's what she felt about going to the beach. And this zipper has a story behind it. She writes, "Ever since I became aware of beauty and its value to the world, the idea of going to the beach has made me stiff with anxiety. By the time I was 6 months old, I've had 2 corrective surgeries, leaving me with a 17-inch scar that snakes its way along the inside of my foot and up the back of my leg. Like a lot of scars, it looks like a poorly placed zipper. Like anything that makes us different, it brought a lot of fear into my life, and it started at the beach." Now, this heart with the roots and the flowers is beautiful. We all have a garden within us, and following our heart instills these roots for the flowers to emerge and bloom. We have to get to the root of things where this fear is coming from. Once we find the roots, we can add nourishment so that these seeds can grow and bloom. She had dealt with experiences where people were not so nice out on the beach, and eventually, she was, maybe not eventually, it might have happened quickly. She talks about age 12. By the age 12, she left the beach behind, that it wasn't a place for her, because a boy had heard about her body and the way her legs were different and ugly. He wanted to know what was wrong with her. She wanted to say that there was nothing wrong with her, but no words came out. And I, along with many of you, may relate, because sometimes the words just don't come out. Our throat chakras are blocked. We are torn on the insides by what we want to say and what we don't say. She wanted to be out in the magic and immersed in all the beauty that being on the beach and by the ocean would. She wanted to remember feeling free. She thought about bathing suits, all the different types. And she considered a wetsuit. She says, all too aware that the idea was as ridiculous as the fear that kept her indoors. But I really loved this paragraph here. She writes, "I thought about bodies and their imperfections and why we carry them around as unforgivable symbols of who we really are. I thought about my legs and how often I've wanted to trade them in for another set, a forgettable pair. I've wanted to fade into the background for years." A lot of us probably relate to that, and that brings me into another thing I wanted to say. I talked about the cortisol and taking action, but you might be saying with the physicalities, but Sage, what if something I want is held back by my appearance? Well, as we read, no doubt this is difficult. I've struggled with this for years myself. I have secrets kept safely beneath my clothing, held close and invisible to the passerby. My efforts in blending in like a chameleon have been perfected, tweaked and updated over the years like the software on your cell phone that you're watching this on. I thought surgery was my freedom. In a lot of ways it was. However, in another way, it still just makes it easier to blend in fear as my safe passenger. Lying in bed was safe, she writes. The ceiling fan spun. I knew exactly what would happen next, how this day would turn in tomorrow and then the one after that. Sometimes fear is imperceptible, a ghost that sits quietly next to me. Sometimes it looks at me and I can see right through it, see how it tricks me into believing in something that isn't really there. Other times, fear is in the dust on my ceiling fan, dark and rooted, deeply hoping that I'll never acknowledge it. I wondered how long before the inability to accept myself and my body would become a memory, an unrecognizable face, someone I used to know. How long would it be before I finally felt comfortable being seen? I wanted to make note that this made me remember a song from Mulan from when I was a kid, and it will probably make more sense as the video continues. When will my reflection show who I am inside? And once we love what we see in the mirror, how long before we finally feel comfortable being seen by other people, truly seen? I think it starts in the acceptance of ourselves. And roots is a big common thread here, roots lately. What is so rooted in you that maybe you don't even want to look? And in that, maybe that's the magic. Maybe that's where freedom lies, finding the root of these things and shedding some light on them. So I wanted to dive in deeper to this body fear, this fear body, as she put it, and what that means for me. And I mentioned that I have secrets I keep safely beneath my clothing, held close and invisible by the passerby. My efforts in blending in like a chameleon have been perfected, tweaked and updated over the years like the software on your cell phone watching this right now. I thought surgery was my freedom, and in a lot of ways, it is. However, in another way, it still just makes it easier to blend in fear as my safe passenger. I am transgender. I have worked very hard just to blend in, or to just blend in and look like just another guy that is nothing in question or fear. Because others also fear the unknown and react in many different ways. I have scars too. Almost a year ago to the day, October 16th, I had chest surgery. And it was freeing. But I still wear this cloak, this desire to be unrecognized. And maybe for me, that ends today. So I have a quick story. And I'm a writer, as you guys may have caught on to in my comments. I write. That is an easier way for me to express myself than through speech, so it's easier for me to prepare. So I was working yesterday following the process of beginning the immunization process. A young adult and his father were there waiting. The instructions I gave to fill out the paperwork excluded question number 10 because that was a question for women. The father replied quickly, "Well, unless he identifies that way." Right. Looking to me for agreement or amusement in what he said. To blend in, I chuckled with him, saying nothing. And in those moments, I felt this almost pain in my spirit. Turning from him, I knew I had falsely represented or wounded my own spirit to blend in. Entering the door code and returning behind the safe counter, I did not feel wounded or offended by his comment. I recognized his fear for what it was, and that's okay. I'm okay with that. I, instead, was wounded by turning my back on my own spirit by entertaining his quip. Surely silence would have been a better alternative. But we can't go down that rabbit hole. The overthinking, that's fear again, taking over. What if? In this, another point is be gentle with yourself. Do not break your spirit down even more for the actions or inaction you chose, or what flow, or what came out freely, your reaction. Forgive yourself. You handled it the best you could in the moment with what you knew, whatever that may be. Breathe in the forgiveness. Breathe it in deep and breathe out the judgment. Because others do judge, but we are our own biggest critics. Close the pages on your own criticism. Because what your spirit so desperately needed, what it so needs, is that it needs to be seen by you, recognized by you first, and forgive yourself for turning your back on that and move forward in that forgiveness and joy and give yourself permission to be, because you are beautiful and you are loved. Have a magical day.